Jake's heart thudded unevenly as the control panel before him flickered and dimmed, his spacecraft groaning under the strain of an unforeseen gravitational pull. The verdant planet below loomed larger and larger, its swirling green and blue hues enveloping his vision as the ship spiraled uncontrollably. Systems failing. Brace for impact, the automated voice warned, its calm tone belying the chaos erupting inside the cockpit. Gritting his teeth, Jake strapped himself tighter into the pilot's seat, his eyes scanning for any sign of a safe landing spot through the swirling clouds. With a deafening crash that echoed through the hull, the world went dark. When he regained consciousness, Jake found himself staring through the cracked viewport at a forest of towering flora, unlike anything he'd ever seen. He unstrapped himself, checking for injuries before activating the emergency hatch. It released with a hiss, cool, alien air brushing against his face. Stepping out onto the soft, moss-like ground, Jake surveyed the wreckage. His ship was beyond repair. "Great," he muttered, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. As he examined his surroundings, a rustling sound caught his attention. He turned sharply, hand instinctively going to the sidearm at his belt. Through a gap in the trees, he glimpsed movement, something or someone watching him. "Hello?" His voice echoed slightly, the dense air dampening its travel. Out from the shadows stepped an alien figure, tall and slender, with luminous skin that seemed to subtly glow in the dappled sunlight. The alien's eyes widened at the sight of Jake, a mix of curiosity and caution in its gaze. "I mean no harm," Jake said slowly, holding his hands up and away from his weapon. The alien tilted its head, studying him, then responded in a melodic voice, "You are not from here." Jake's brows raised in surprise. "You speak English?" "We learn from the stars," the alien replied, its voice tinged with amusement. Jake took a cautious step forward. "I'm Jake. My ship crashed. I guess I'm stuck here." The alien nodded slowly. "I am Lyra. Welcome to Ethera. Come, they must know of your arrival." "Who must know?" Jake asked, following as Lyra turned back towards the forest. "Our leaders. We need to understand why you have come," Lyra explained, leading him deeper into the forest. Their path wound through trees, so tall their tops were lost in the mist that hung heavy above. As they walked, Jake noticed the wildlife. Creatures unlike any he'd cataloged before moved through the underbrush, watching the strangers with cautious eyes. "Is it safe here?" he asked, noting a particularly large creature with vibrant feathers. Lyra smiled lightly. "Ethera is gentle if you are gentle. The creatures here reflect the energy you bring." "I come in peace," Jake said, hoping his smile was convincing. Lyra's laughter was light, like the wind through the leaves. "We shall see what the council thinks of that, Earthman." The banter eased the tension in Jake's shoulders, and he allowed himself to marvel at the beauty of Ethera. Despite his dire situation, there was something undeniably captivating about this place and his enigmatic guide. As they approached a clearing, structures that blended almost seamlessly with the environment came into view. They were made of materials that mimicked the forest, curved and flowing like the trees themselves. Lyra stopped and gestured towards the village. "We will find help here for you, Jake from Earth. Maybe even a way back home." Jake nodded, though part of him wasn't sure he was ready to think about leaving just yet. Lyra led Jake into the heart of the village, where the alien structures rose organically from the ground like the flora itself. The alien villagers paused to stare at him, their expressions unreadable. Jake couldn't help but feel like a specimen under a microscope, out of place and oversized in the delicate environment of Ethera. As they approached a particularly large building, a group of elders emerged, their robes flowing and eyes bright with keen intelligence. Lyra bowed deeply, and Jake hurried to mimic her gesture. "Elders, this is Jake. He comes from Earth," Lyra introduced. One of the elders, a tall figure with a commanding presence, stepped forward. "Jake of Earth, we welcome you to Ethera. We are called Eno. What brings you to our world?" Jake took a deep breath, trying to formulate his explanation into something that sounded diplomatic. "My arrival was accidental, Elder Eno. My ship lost control, and I crash-landed. I mean no intrusion. Eno nodded thoughtfully. We sense the disturbance. Your ship has technologies unfamiliar to us. It is something we wish to understand. Another elder, smaller and with a sharper voice, interjected. And what does your species seek here, Jake? What are your intentions? Before Jake could respond, Lyra spoke up. Nara, please. He has crashed. He poses no threat. Nara shot a skeptical look at Jake, but remained silent, allowing Eno to continue the conversation. Jake, your situation is unique. We must assess the implications of your presence here. For now, you will stay with Lyra. She will be your guide and liaison. Jake nodded, relieved at least to have Lyra as a familiar ally. Thank you, Elder Eno. I appreciate your hospitality and will respect your rules. After a few more formalities, Lyra led Jake away from the council area. You will need a place to stay. Follow me. As they walked, Jake glanced around at the other villagers, noticing a few younger aliens observing him with what appeared to be a mixture of curiosity and excitement. Lyra noticed his interest and explained, Our young ones are fascinated by new things. We do not often have visitors. They stopped in front of a structure that resembled an overgrown cocoon, blended into its natural surroundings. You can stay here. It's one of our guest dwellings. Inside, the space was surprisingly comfortable, furnished with items that were clearly designed to accommodate different species' needs. This is amazing, Jake commented, inspecting a chair that seemed to mold perfectly to his body as he sat down. Lyra smiled. We try to be prepared. Tomorrow, I will show you around, help you understand our way of life. Maybe you can also teach us about Earth. Jake agreed, eager to make himself useful. I'd like that. And maybe together, we can figure out a way to communicate with my home. I need to report what happened. The communication array in the village might be adaptable to your needs. We can look at it tomorrow, Lyra suggested. They spent the evening exchanging basic information about their worlds. Jake learned about Ethra's governance, a form of direct democracy where everyone had a voice, and shared stories of Earth's diverse cultures and environments. As night fell, Lyra stood to leave. Rest well, Jake. Tomorrow is a new day. Thank you, Lyra. For everything, Jake called after her as she disappeared into the night. Alone, Jake pondered his situation. Stranded on an alien planet, dependent on the goodwill of its inhabitants, he felt a strange mix of anxiety and exhilaration. Tomorrow, he would start to learn just how much of a new world he had stumbled into. The morning light filtered softly through the transparent walls of Jake's temporary home, gently pulling him from sleep. He stretched, still amazed by the comfort and ingenuity of Etheran architecture, which blended nature and functionality so seamlessly. As promised, Lyra arrived just after dawn. Today, she was accompanied by another Etheran, a male named Torin, who greeted Jake with a warm, resonant voice. Good morning, Jake. I am Torin, an engineer of sorts here. Lyra tells me you're interested in our communication systems. Yes, I am. Thanks for coming to help, Jake replied, shaking Torin's offered hand, fascinated by the slight luminescence of his skin. We're curious about Earth's technology as well. It will be an enlightening exchange for both sides, Torin said with a smile. They walked towards the village center, where the communication array was housed. The device resembled a large, intricate sculpture, its surfaces humming softly with energy. This is how we connect with other Etheran settlements across the planet, Lyra explained. But it can do more. We've used it for deep space communication experiments too. Jake looked over the controls, which were completely alien to him. I'll need some guidance here, he admitted. Let me show you, Torin offered, his fingers dancing over the surface. Our system uses a combination of quantum entanglement and electromagnetic waves. It's quite adaptable. As Torin explained the technical details, Jake took notes, trying to match their technology with something equivalent on Earth. The complexity was daunting, but Jake's background in astrophysics helped him grasp the basic principles. After the technical rundown, Lyra suggested a break for lunch, leading them to a communal area where food was shared freely among the villagers. The meal consisted of various fruits and vegetables, all unfamiliar but delicious. Torin, how do you manage resources here? Everything seems so harmonious, Jake asked, genuinely curious. Torin's eyes lit up with pride. We live by a philosophy of balance and sustainability. Our technology and way of life are designed to minimize our impact on the planet. Jake nodded, impressed. There's a lot we could learn from you. Earth has its issues with sustainability. Conversation flowed easily as they ate. Lyra and Torin were keen to hear about Earth cities, oceans, and deserts. After lunch, Jake joined Torin at the local workshop where Etherin technology was crafted and maintained. The workshop was a hive of activity, with Etherins of all ages engaging in various projects. Here, let me show you something, Torin said, guiding Jake to a workbench where a device lay partially disassembled. This is one of our atmospheric regulators. It helps keep the climate around our village stable. Jake peered at the components, recognizing similarities to Earth's climate control efforts. You've managed to advance far beyond us in environmental technology. We had to, Torin replied seriously. Our planet went through drastic climate shifts before we learned to stabilize it. Now, we live in harmony with our world, not against it. Their discussion was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. Rushing out, they saw a group of young Etherins gathered around a screen displaying a map of the stars. One of the youths excitedly pointed out a new data point blinking softly. What's going on? Jake asked, drawn to the excitement. We've detected a faint signal from the direction of one of our outer colonies, one of the youths explained. It's unusual. Torin and Lyra exchanged a look. It's rare to get such signals unless something significant has happened, Lyra said, her tone tinged with concern. Jake watched, feeling a surge of solidarity. The Etherins were not so different from humans, facing challenges with curiosity and a community spirit. As they gathered to investigate the signal, he felt an unexpected sense of belonging. Here, far from Earth, Jake was part of something important. After the excitement of the signal discovery, Torin invited Jake to participate in a panel discussion to share more about Earth's technology and cultural practices. The forum was held in the Central Pavilion, an open, airy space where the community gathered for important events. Jake, you'll find our community is very eager to learn about Earth, Torin said as they approached the pavilion, where curious Etherins were already assembling. I'll do my best to represent my planet well, Jake replied, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. The panel consisted of Jake, Torin, and another Etherin, a historian named Velen, who was particularly interested in Earth's varied cultures. The discussion began with Torin introducing Jake and explaining the purpose of the meeting. Today, we are here to expand our knowledge, Torin began, addressing the crowd. Jake has come from Earth, a planet rich with life and history, much like Ethera but also very different. Velen, with his keen, observant eyes, turned to Jake. Could you start by telling us about Earth's governance? How do your leaders make decisions for the whole? Jake nodded. Earth is divided into many countries, each with its own form of government. Many use democracy, where the people vote to choose their leaders. Others are governed by fewer people or even single individuals. It's quite varied. Murmurs of interest rippled through the crowd. Lyra, sitting in the front row, looked fascinated. And what of Earth's technology? Specifically, how do you manage your planet's resources? Velen asked, his tone conveying deep interest. We have technology to harness energy from the sun and wind, but we still use a lot of old methods that harm our environment, Jake explained, his voice tinged with regret. It's something we're working on changing. Velen nodded thoughtfully. Ethera once faced similar challenges, he related. Our shift to sustainability was driven by necessity. The discussion shifted to culture, and Jake shared images of Earth's art, music, and architecture, which seemed to captivate the Etherin audience. How do your people find joy? A young Etherin from the crowd asked, her voice carrying a sincere curiosity. Through many avenues, Jake replied with a smile. Music, art, sports, spending time with loved ones. Despite our differences, joy is a universal desire. As the discussion drew to a close, Torin thanked Jake for his insights. This exchange has been invaluable, he concluded. Understanding each other is the first step towards a broader dialogue between our worlds. After the panel, several Etherins approached Jake with more questions, eager to continue the exchange. Torin and Lyra led him away for a quieter conversation. That went really well, Jake, Lyra said, her eyes bright. You've given us much to think about. I've learned a lot too, Jake admitted, especially about how similar our hopes and challenges are. It makes the universe feel a little smaller. As they walked back through the village, Torrance suggested a visit to their main library the next day. Our archives contain detailed records of Ethera's history and technology. It might help you understand us even better. I'd like that, Jake said. And maybe I can contribute something from Earth's history as well. That would be most welcome, Velen, who had joined them, added warmly. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the village as they parted ways, each thoughtful about the day's exchanges. Jake felt a deepening connection to Ethera, moved by their openness and the unexpected parallels between their world and his. As he headed to his dwelling, he realized how much he had yet to learn and share, looking forward to each new day on this alien planet. The Etheran Library was a marvel of architecture and knowledge, its walls lined with crystalline data banks that shimmered with stored wisdom. Jake followed Lyra and Torrin inside, his eyes wide with awe. The gentle hum of energy filled the air, a testament to the advanced technology that preserved centuries of Etheran history. This is the heart of our knowledge, Torrin explained, leading Jake to a console that looked out over the vast chamber. Everything we know is stored here. Jake nodded, impressed. I'd love to see if there's anything about Earth's history here. We can search the archives, Lyra suggested, initiating the interface. Our explorers have gathered data from many systems. Perhaps there's a cross-reference. As Lyra set up the search, Torrin turned to Jake. While we wait, maybe you could tell us more about Earth's technological achievements. Of course, Jake replied. He described various innovations from Earth, ranging from medical advances to exploratory spacecraft. Torrin listened intently, often pausing him to ask detailed questions. Meanwhile, the search results came up. Lyra pointed at the screen. Look, there's a mention of a system with a yellow sun and several planets. It could be yours. Jake peered at the data, a thrill running through him. That sounds like our solar system. Can you pull up more on that? Lyra expanded the entry, revealing a detailed astronomical chart and fragmented notes from an Etheran scout ship. It's mostly observational data, but it confirms our scouts passed near your space. That's incredible, Jake said, the connection making him feel less isolated, even this far from home. The afternoon progressed with more exchanges of information. Lyra and Torrin were especially interested in Earth's diverse ecosystems, which Jake illustrated with images and descriptions of rainforests, deserts, and oceans. As diverse as Ethera is, Earth seems to have even more ecological variety, Torrin observed thoughtfully. It's fascinating. It is, Jake agreed, feeling a pang of homesickness as he showed them pictures of Earth's landscapes. As the day wore on, they decided to take a break and walk through a nearby nature preserve to relax and chat more informally. The preserve was a tranquil place where the Etherans cultivated native plants and studied natural ecosystems. Walking among the alien flora, Jake felt Lyra's gaze on him. You miss your home, she stated more than asked. I do, Jake admitted. But being here, learning from you, sharing about Earth, it helps. It makes me feel like I'm still connected to my world, even so far away. Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. Sharing our worlds brings us closer, doesn't it? It does, Jake said, looking over at her. The setting sun cast a warm glow on her face, highlighting the subtle iridescence of her skin. He realized how much he had come to appreciate her company. Lyra seemed to hesitate, then took a breath. Jake, there's a festival tonight. A celebration of the lunar alignment. Would you come with me? Jake smiled, touched by the invitation. I'd love to. The festival was vibrant, filled with light and music. Etherans gathered in colorful attire, their laughter and conversations filling the air. Lyra stayed close to Jake, introducing him to various customs and foods. As they watched a dance performance, Lyra's hand brushed against Jake's. He looked at her, and in a spontaneous moment, he took her hand. Lyra didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled softly, squeezing his hand gently. Under the alien moons and the soft light of lanterns, Jake felt a profound connection not just to Lyra but to Ethera itself. The evening ended with a sense of new possibilities, both for the sharing of knowledge and for deeper, more personal bonds. After the festival, the mood between Jake and Lyra had subtly shifted. There was a gentle familiarity in their interactions, a silent acknowledgement of the shared evening that had brought them closer. The following day, as they walked towards a quiet part of the village to discuss Earth's environmental management systems, Lyra seemed more reflective. "Last night was wonderful, Jake," she started, her voice low. "I think everyone enjoyed seeing you so engaged with our culture." Jake smiled, looking over at her. "I had a great time. It's easy to enjoy myself with such good company." Their conversation was briefly interrupted as Torin joined them, carrying a device that resembled a holographic projector. "Good morning. I thought we might need this for today's discussion. It's a model of our climate stabilization system." "Thanks, Torin," Jake replied. "I'm eager to see how it works." They set up in a communal space, a small amphitheater-like area where a few other Etherans had gathered, curious about the day's topic. Torin activated the device, and a detailed 3D model of Ethera's atmospheric networks materialized, showing airflow patterns and energy distributions. "As you can see," Torin explained, pointing to various parts of the model, "we integrate natural plant systems with our technology to create a balanced microclimate around each settlement." Jake, engrossed in the technology, shared his insights from Earth's struggles and successes with climate change. "We're trying different methods, but nothing this integrated. There's a lot we could learn from you." Lyra, watching the exchange, added, "Maybe this is something you could take back to Earth, a project to combine both our technologies." "I'd love that," Jake said, his mind racing with possibilities. As the crowd dispersed after the presentation, Torin clapped Jake on the shoulder. "I'll leave you two to your discussions. I have some adjustments to make based on what you've shared." Once they were alone, Lyra turned to Jake, her expression serious. "Jake, I wanted to talk about last night." He met her gaze, sensing the importance of the moment. "Yes? When you held my hand, it was a new experience for me. We don't often express affection so openly here, but I found it comforting," Lyra confessed, her cheeks tinted with a slight glow. Jake took a step closer, his heart quickening. "I felt the same, Lyra, and I've been wondering what it means for us." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes searching his. "It's getting harder, isn't it, to ignore these feelings?" Jake nodded, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "It is. This thing is getting harder. What should we do?" "Maybe we don't need to do anything just yet," Lyra suggested softly. "Maybe we just see where these feelings take us." Encouraged, Jake reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Lyra's breath hitched slightly at the touch, and she stepped closer. They were interrupted by a call from one of the villagers, asking Lyra for assistance. She looked at Jake, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "Duty calls. Let's talk more later." "Definitely," Jake agreed, watching her go. Left alone, Jake sat back down, his thoughts swirling. The connection with Lyra was unexpected but undeniably powerful. He realized he was no longer just a visitor on Ethera. He was becoming part of its tapestry. And as he pondered his next steps, he knew that whatever decisions they made, his journey on Ethera was taking a turn he had never anticipated. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the village as Jake and Lyra met to continue their conversation from earlier in the day. They chose a quiet spot near the edge of the village, where they could talk without interruptions. Lyra seemed thoughtful, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Jake, I've been thinking about our situation," she began, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Our bond. It's unusual here. Ethera doesn't often see relationships like ours, especially not with someone from another world." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. It's not simple for me either. Back on Earth, this kind of relationship would be filled with complications." They both sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the complexities of their growing closeness. Finally, Jake spoke up. "But despite the complications, I feel something strong, something worth exploring. Don't you?" Lyra turned to look at him, her expression softening. "I do. It's just, we need to consider what a future could look like for us." Jake took her hand, his touch gentle. "Let's figure it out together. What are the concerns here, on Ethera?" It's mostly about integration, Lyra explained. How two beings from different worlds can truly integrate. Our cultures, our biological differences, the societal implications. Jake squeezed her hand reassuringly. On Earth, we have a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. If we're committed to making this work, I'm sure we can find a way to overcome those barriers. Lyra smiled, the tension easing from her features. I like that saying. Encouraged, Jake proposed an idea. Maybe we could start by sharing more about each other's worlds. I could arrange a series of talks about Earth for anyone who's interested. It might help them understand where I come from and see the benefits of our bond. That's a wonderful idea, Lyra agreed enthusiastically. And I could organize something similar for you. A deeper dive into Etherin culture. Understanding is the first step towards acceptance. They spent the next few hours planning the events, discussing potential topics and who in the village might be most open to their ideas. The excitement of planning something together revitalized their spirits. As they wrapped up their meeting, Lyra stood, stretching her arms towards the darkening sky. You know, Jake, I think we're doing something important here. Not just for us, but for Ethera and maybe even for Earth. I think so too, Jake replied, standing to join her. And no matter what happens, I'm glad to be doing this with you. Their plans set in motion, Jake and Lyra parted ways with a newfound determination. Over the next few weeks, they hosted their respective cultural exchange sessions, which were met with curiosity and, gradually, acceptance from the villagers. The process wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of skepticism and resistance, questions that were hard to answer, and cultural nuances that were difficult to convey. But every question answered and every misunderstanding cleared brought Jake and Lyra closer to each other and to their goal of integration. As they navigated these complexities, the bond between them deepened, rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision for a future where both their worlds could coexist. As Jake lay in bed that night, thinking over the events of the past weeks, he felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. Together, they were paving a new path, one that could potentially change the face of interstellar relations forever. As the dual series of cultural exchange sessions came to a close, the village of Ethera seemed transformed. A newfound sense of curiosity and acceptance filled the air, and both Etherins and Jake felt the shift. On the final day of the sessions, Jake and Lyra met once again at their favorite spot near the edge of the village, looking out over the landscape bathed in the gentle light of dusk. Lyra turned to Jake, her eyes reflecting the colors of the setting sun. "You've changed this place, Jake." "And me," she said softly. Jake smiled, squeezing her hand. "We've changed each other. I never imagined I'd find a home here, but now I can't imagine being anywhere else." The moment was quiet, serene, filled with the understanding of all they had overcome and the future they were preparing to build. "So, what's next for us?" Jake asked, his voice filled with hope. Lyra looked thoughtful, her gaze wandering over the village. "I think we continue what we started. We keep teaching, learning, and showing both our worlds that differences can bring us together rather than pull us apart." "And us?" Jake asked, needing to hear more about where they stood personally. Lyra turned to him, her hand coming up to gently touch his cheek. "We see where this relationship can go. No barriers, no fears. Just us, learning about each other and growing together." Jake felt his heart swell with emotion. "That sounds perfect." Later that evening, they joined the villagers at a celebratory gathering. Music filled the air, and the community danced and shared food, their faces alight with joy. Jake and Lyra were at the center, their presence a symbol of the new ties that had formed between an Earthling and the Etherin people. Torin approached them, a broad smile on his face. "Jake, you've brought us a great gift," he said, clapping him on the back. "The gift of perspective. And Lyra, your openness has guided us all," he added, turning to her with respect. The elders of the village joined them, their expressions serene and approving. One elder, who had initially been skeptical, now nodded at Jake with respect. "You have shown us that the unknown need not be feared but embraced and understood." As the celebration continued, Jake took a moment to look around at the joyful faces, feeling a deep connection to these people and this place. He realized that he had started something here that was much larger than himself, a dialogue between worlds that would continue to grow and flourish. As the night wore on, Lyra and Jake found themselves back at their spot, watching the stars. "Do you think Earth is ready for a relationship like ours?" Jake asked, curious about her thoughts on his home planet. "We'll never know until we try," Lyra responded, her voice filled with conviction. "Let's show them. Let's show them all how beautiful this can be." Jake nodded, his decision firm. "Let's do it. Let's prepare for a journey to Earth when the time is right. We'll take this story to them." Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, her voice soft and determined. Together, under the starlit sky of Ethera, they planned for the future, a future where two vastly different worlds might come together in peace and mutual understanding. It was the dawn of a new era, one of shared knowledge, shared love, and endless possibilities.